Welcome to another episode of The Conversation. And today you're joined by the host, myself, Rye,
And your co-host Sync.
and then we're
Uh,
joined by,
hey guys, my name is Giant Dad, and I am glad to be here.
no, for sure, we're great to have you on. So a lot of times I'm not quite able to really, just play as much as I can. So I'm on Twitter looking up a lot of stuff, scouting out a lot of people to really bring on for the podcast. And I was, looking into a lot of sparking stuff. And so I happened to come across Giant Dad, and he was tweeting something real about sparking. He was talking about some of the issues that plague the game, and I thought that it was presented in a really nice manner. So I was like, hey, let's bring him on and see if he wants to talk about some of the issues plaguing the game, because a lot of people think that this game is just the things and sliced bread. And so our intention with this episode is just to talk about Sparking Zero and bring to light some of the issues and maybe start the conversation on those things so it can get fixed. Yeah, it's awesome to have you, Giant Dad.
Thank you. I will try to explain things as best as I can. I don't really have like a data or a spreadsheet or anything like that, but I will try to explain myself thoroughly when it comes to all these issues.
We
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, that's most certainly. I would say initially, man, I mean, what where did your love for, Dragon Ball as a whole originate from?
Uh, I would honestly say when I started playing Budokai 3 when I was like a teenager. And then after that, I started watching OG Dragon Ball, and that's how it all started, really. And then when the Tenkaichi series came out, I started playing those. And yeah, I mean, everybody in the community knows that Tenkaichi 3 is among one of the greatest anime fighters ever to be made. So
Yeah.
that's how it all started.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I got tons of memories on Tenkaichi, just slapping up my friend, him slapping me up, just all kinds of, just crazy cool moments with, using all the different characters and just fleshing out every character and just having so much fun. And I think that's one of the things that Arc Zero really has going for itself, the fact that it's been able to take that same feel, at least seemingly, capture that feel in the newer game, in terms of like, hey, if you really like, I don't know, Cell Junior looks great. Cell Junior's animations look great. It really feels like you can use the character and have fun. But interestingly enough, I'm wondering when it comes to Sparking Zero, what are people just refusing to acknowledge to be, just an annoying problem with the game or problem, so to speak?
Mm. Well, I would say personally, not to throw shade at anybody that loves the Tenkaichi series, but I think most people are sadly living in nostalgia. Unfortunately, Sparking Zero is not. I mean, in terms of like visuals and everything else, it is just a joy to just even look at, like seeing the supers go and the ultimates and the fighting, rush combos and all that stuff. But in terms of like mechanic wise, there is a lot that needs changing. Like for example, mm, the instant sparking, for example, it costs 3 skill points, but the problem with insta sparkings and all those other like really strong abilities, like after image strike, that's a whole other problem too. There is no key sickness. If you don't know what key sickness is, key sickness, I'm not sure if that started with Tenkaichi 1, but I'm sure it's obviously from in Budokai Tenkaichi 3. And that basically essentially it gives you key sickness, so it makes you charge slower. And I believe you can't gain any skill points or what you call it before in battle stocks. I think you used to call it before. I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but yeah. So you would get punished for abusing a really strong skill. But in Sparking Zero, for some reason, Key Sickness nor Emergency Wave Blaster is back. Emergency Wave Blaster as well is a well. you can sacrifice a bit of I think it's one third of your health bar, or just to get out of a combo. And the thing with key sickness not being in Sparking Zero is there's simply no punishment for spamming insta sparking. You can activate insta sparking, land your ults, and you can still be in recovery frames if the ult connects, and you can go into another insta sparking, which makes the game extremely redundant and brainless. And I think that really shouldn't be a thing. That's just the sparking alone.
That sounds like Tenkaichi in itself, like, had like inherently, maybe unintentionally from the developers, ideas that would make a balanced game. Maybe compared to like Sparking Zero, where, I don't know why they got rid of those things that were in Budokai, but it sounds like to me, I guess don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's like Budokai Tenkaichi, I guess they knew what could be spammable things, and then they had things that could stop it. So that made the game a lot more enjoyable, comparable to like Sparking Zero right now, or maybe I'm just reading this wrong.
Uh, Budokai Tenkaichi 3, weirdly enough, somehow came out more balanced and fair than Sparking Zero. I mean, there's like I said, in Sparking Zero, it's just like the small little things that add up into a bigger problem. Like in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, there's key sickness, there's emergency blade, there's emergency wave blaster if you just want to get out like of rush combos, even if it does take a good chunk of your health. If you don't feel like super countering, then you can have that option to get people off you. But the thing with Sparking Zero is super counter is it's interesting because I feel like it's super inconsistent, but it's also really badly designed. Like for example, if you just happen to, it really depends on who you happen to connect with, connection wise. If you have somebody that has bad connection, it's almost impossible to get the super counter off. Well, sorry, I forgot to mention a really big flaw about the super counter is that there is absolutely no punishment for spamming it, like at all. In Budokai Tenkaichi 3, there used to be an invisible cooldown. I do not remember how many milliseconds or seconds it was, but you could not do a super counter again until the cooldown ran out. And if you keep, failing to execute the super counter correctly, the cooldown would pop up again. And there is no such thing in Sparking Zero whatsoever. So, like I was saying before, if you happen to connect with somebody with bad connection, it is almost literally impossible to get a super counter off, especially if the character is a slow attacker. Oh boy, you're gonna have a very rough time trying to get it. But if the connection is really good, the super counter is completely abusable, especially if you're fighting like really fast characters like Kid Buu, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Birder. There's a couple of other ones that I'm missing. But yeah, super counter is another big problem in Sparking Zero right now that really needs to be addressed because it's making the game so unfun. There's basically essentially no true combos anymore, like in Budokai Tenkaichi 3. So if you can just spam it, and if you happen to get lucky, you can get the super counter off. There's basically, like I said, no true combos, and it really just sucks because you get like the rush of trying to get like the rush combos and all that stuff just for somebody to just mash up square and get out of it. It's ridiculous. It's a really bad oversight by the devs that really needs to be fixed or adjusted.
Oh wow, that actually
Oh,
does sound like an oversight that, you know, like yeah, like I think from my experience from Raging Blast 2 as a kid, I used to play that, a little bit in the competitive scene a little bit. Wasn't like really big or really deep into it, but there was like that idea where you can do combos and you had like these combo potentials, and people who knew how to vanish really had to find the skill in some way. I don't know if my friend Karai could corroborate with that, but it like Raging Blast 2, unintentionally as well, seemed like really good design games, and like this oversight, you know, people aren't really addressing it because like nostalgia, or they're blind to like that truth, and it's like kind of unfortunate to hear about that. I guess my question would be is that what would be the suggestions for fixing these issues that you see in the game? What things would you make communication to the community that we can all kind of come together and say, hey, what are these things that we can fix?
Okay, so I'll just mention two for now. So for now, when it comes to insta sparking, they either need to increase the well. If I talk about this, I would also need to talk about how the skill point system actually works as well, and that's also bloated as well. But for the sake of just getting it over with, so when it comes to insta sparking, the it needs to be at least minimum for skill points, so it's not spammable. Either that or introduce key sickness back, which I would say yes, because key sickness would actually negate a lot of these insta-spark abusers, as I like to call them. I guess either increase the skill count or introduce key sickness back. And when it comes to super counters, I suggest making it how it was in BT3, which again, I'm not really sure how many milliseconds or seconds was the cooldown in BT3, but there needs to be some sort of punishment so you don't spam super counter. But the problem with that too is that if if you mess up the super counter and there is a cooldown, there's going to be absolutely no way to get out of rush combos at all. Which, with that being said, emergency blaster also needs to be reintroduced to avoid that problem as well. Unless you're using a character that has explosive wave for their skill, yeah, it's gonna be an issue for sure. It's again, there's a lot of small things that add up, and it's really making the game like unenjoyable right now.
Um, that's definitely a lot to take in. So it's interesting how we're seeing, based off of what you said, this instance of where the game has almost taken a few steps back, especially in terms of game balance. Do you think that Sparking Zero has kind of fallen prey to the trend and arena fighters and fighting games as a whole, where it's like, hey, we're gonna make this a little bit easier than it used to be in comparison. Do you think that that's what's happening here, or did the devs just truly drop the ball?
I mean, in truth, there really isn't much. There really isn't much to fix about the game. Like the game is almost, I would say, in a pretty good spot. It's just they need to tweak certain small things so it becomes more fun and enjoyable. Um, what was I gonna say? Like again, it's like the small things, like this certain skills costing not costing enough skill points, or how the super counter works, or the vanishing wars, which is another. They somehow made the vanishing wars easier in Sparking Zero. And Budokai Tenkaichi 3, it was much faster. And if you guys kept vanishing, it would also transition into who can uh pick the four face buttons like faster. I don't know what's that called exactly. But yeah, it would also transition into that where the character just here, blast going around and clashes. And yeah, that also needs to man, it really is a problem. Like banishing wars are just so boring because if both of you just happen to have full key, it can take forever, and it's so mind-numbingly boring to watch. They either need to increase like how much the key costs when you vanish, or they need to make it faster, or do both and also introduce the button clash that was in BT3 as well.
Hmm.
As in terms of truth be told, the game is easier in BT3. Like it's a lot more casual, I would say, compared to Budokai Tenkaichi 2, because we even have like auto combos in Sparking Zero. You just keep pressing a square, and you get a rush combo, do a launcher, and then send them down. So yeah, I would say in terms of making it easier, they did make it mind-numbingly easier.
Yeah, definitely by comparison. And that's just something that we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but Sync and I come from the Storm community, and even we saw a lot of that with the latest installment of the Storm series, Naruto Storm Connections, where if you knew your stuff in Storm 4, basically what the devs decided to do was all the things that had execution barriers behind them, they decided to just kind of implement them in the following game in connections in a way of where they were just way easier to do, it was much more accessible, and it's just something I've been noticing in games as a whole where they really don't want like execution being a thing is starting to really just not exist anymore. Even in terms of Street Fighter 6, you'll hear a lot of top players say that, oh, execution is nowhere near what it used to be. For example, in Ultra Street Fighter 4, you had one frame links. In Street Fighter 6, you have more buffer, and there aren't one frame links for things. It's much more generous. Even in MK1, links are nowhere near as tight as they used to be. You have more leeway. I can't speak that much to Tekken because I don't play too much Tekken. I'm still starting off, but there just seems to be this wave of just making execution non-existent. And while I don't think execution needs to be crazy hard in the game, I do think it being an aspect of learning in the game is still valuable and important as it contributes to the overall depth of a game, for sure.
And without that
Mm.
depth, it's not engaging to the player. It doesn't engage with their brains. It doesn't engage with their reward center of like, hey, I did this challenge, I did this execution, I learned how to play this game, and I put in time and effort, and it will show. And it's a symptom of even a bigger problem, I guess, that they're trying to appeal to more players while getting, and I guess it's being repeated here. It's getting rid of what makes a game enjoyable. I play Blaze Blue Central Fiction a lot, and that game is a really fun game, even though the execution is a pretty high stuff. You have to actually learn your own combos, learn your own setups, and overall, the reward in that game is like if you learn a good combo, if you learn a good strategy, if you know how to play with your main character, you gain a lot of benefits. But games like BlazBlue like that, if they do get a remaster, they're gonna remove all that reward and that pleasure from the game to get more people into the game and get more people to play that game, which is, I think for me, maybe it's sad. It's a sad reality that we're going into right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially, I'm not. I don't really play too many like 3D arena fighter. I mean, 2D arena fighters, but in fighters, they kind of did the same thing where there's also like automatic combos and that goes into super. And even Street Fighter 6 introduced for some reason they introduced one button supers, one button
Yeah.
Shoryus, one button Hadoukens, one button Tatsus, and that is I feel like this generation of gamers are just making the devs are just making everything easier. There's really no thought when it comes to trying to learn a video game. It's odd.
Um, I definitely agree with that. Um, Looking at sparking, again, do you think, you said the game's in a pretty good spot, just needs some tweaks here and there. We know that there's DLC coming out for it, so there's definitely a chance for them to patch the game there. There's also a chance for them to continue to support the game with DLC like they have with the Xenoverse 2. Do you think that, Sparking Zero is a game that's here for the long haul, like a Xenoverse 2?
Uh, I mean, if the sales figures speak, then I would say yes. The game sold easily 3 million in 24 hours, and I'm assuming they've already sold way more in the first week. Uh, but if the devs ignore these problems like they did in Xenoverse 2, it's not really gonna have a good chunk of players playing the game. Like there's I wanted to bring up like what I think are the issues, and I'll try to introduce like some fixes or tweaks that can make the game better. So right now it would be the skill systems, the super counters, the banish wars, the no no key sickness and no emergency wave blaster, and also no dedicated block button. Good lord, that one is very painful. I'll just bring an example for the block button, but essentially, if somebody goes into sparking and you're facing somebody like Z Broly, for example, he has an insta spark and he is immune to key stuns and all that stuff. And once he goes into insta sparking, he can simply just spam the living daylights out of the key blast And if you just happen to be deflecting and he throws it's essentially I believe it's either deflecting or blocking, but that's essentially a free super or ults depending if if they're unblockable or not. It's especially more apparent with if you're deflecting, he can simply just go towards you while he's spamming key blast, and your character will just keep deflecting. There's absolutely nothing you can do. That is essentially a free super and a free ultimate as well, which is very weird because in Budokai 3 there used to be a dedicated block button, and if you wanted to deflect key blast, you would press either you would use the left stick to go left or right to deflect, said key blast. But for some reason that is completely absent in Sparking Zero, and that just hurts my brain a little bit because sometimes sometimes I just want to block and I do not block because if the guy just when he's throwing the key blast and I just happen to like essentially press the circle button when the key blast come on me, my character will just automatically deflect. And if he has sparking, then I am essentially screwed. There's nothing I can do if he decides to throw a super or an ultimate, which is very odd. They also need to bring that back as well, or fix how blocking works in general in the game. Um, where was I? When it comes to the skill point system, there is a lot of things that adds to the regeneration bar of the skill points bar. So doing vanishes and vanishing wars, for what I've noticed, increases the skill bar a little bit. But the biggest offender is probably you deflecting key blast. You will get a absurd amount of bar or regeneration just for deflecting key blast, and that adds to the other problems because regeneration is already normally really fast. So when you add in the insta sparkings, the unblockable ultimates, the after images, the wild senses, the explosive waves, you can do that all that stuff consistently because of how the skill point system works currently. It is too overbloated. You get rewarded too much for like I mean, I think personally that the bar should just go up normally. There shouldn't be you shouldn't get any rewards for either deflecting a key blast or going into vanishing wars and all that stuff. I believe they should just let the bar go up normally, and the bar also as well needs to be the regeneration needs to be slower as well because the skill point system alone is what's causing a lot of these problems, and as well as having no key sickness as well. So I would say that's like the major issues. Like the two major issues are the skill point system, how it works, and how the super counter currently works. Like no true combos, and you can spam, instant sparking and all that stuff because of everything else that adds to the skill point system bar or regeneration, whatever you want to call it.
Gosh. Yeah, that's definitely quite a bit to take in to account. Yeah, that skill point sickness. That sounds like something that's definitely needed. Like that would help out the game a ton. Kind of reminds me of how the selling mechanic works in Super Smash Bros. Where basically, imagine you have 10 points, and let's say you hit somebody with the character's back hair. That character's back hair will go into point one. And then let's say you keep using the back hair. After 4 or 5 back hairs, that sixth back hair is going to be a whole lot weaker than if it was the first back hair hitting for the first time. And so it really helps certain moves that are pretty strong not be overwhelmingly strong because if you start abusing them, if you start hitting someone with them a lot, it's just going to be weaker and weaker and weaker. And so I think that's definitely a very healthy idea for the game. You mentioned throughout all that, you mentioned Z Broly. I'm curious, what's your top? Who do you think the top 5 strongest characters in the game are right now for Sparking Zero?
Oof, that is I personally want to say hmm. So I personally think that Super Saiyan 1 Vegito is probably the best character in the game right now.
Yeah.
right next to Z Broly, I would say. And for third, fourth, and fifth, I would put third Master Ultra Instinct Goku, fourth Full Power Jiren, and five, I actually have Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta low because he actually doesn't have I mean he has Insta Spark, but besides that, he doesn't really have any unblockables, which is why I put him so low on the list. Like I only imagine if Ultimate Impact or 100 times Ultra Big Bang coming out were unblockable. Good lord, that character's already like being played enough, and if he had unblockables, people would definitely be throwing some controllers for sure.
Yeah. Oh man, what makes Vegito so strong?
After Image Strike,
Ah.
there's your answer because of how the skill system works. Like okay, Super Vegito can throw after Image Strike, but the bar keeps. Sorry, after Image Strike lasts for a whole 15 seconds, and he can essentially dodge whatever he wants except Key Blast. So if you throw a super, he's dodging it. If you throw an ultimate, he's dodging it. If you throw straight hands, he's dodging it for the whole 15 seconds. It is that definitely has to be an oversight. Like, okay, I'm actually 15 seconds is a bit much, but I don't mind it because I've already learned how to a bit. But you shouldn't, as soon as you activate it, there should be some indicator at least, or you shouldn't be able to regenerate any skill points at all whatsoever until the 15 seconds are gone, or until they decide to nerf it. Some people were suggesting making it so he only vanishes a couple of times, but that can be kind of annoying also because it can make him even more stally. But I mean, I personally suggest lowering the seconds to. I personally would say 8 to 10 seconds, or keep the regular 15 seconds, but make him so he doesn't regenerate any skill points at all. So that would be my fix for that.
Okay. That
But
makes
in
a lot
terms
of
of,
sense.
but in terms
Mhm.
of supers and unblockables, he doesn't really have unblockables for either super nor ultimate. But after image strike is a very freaking strong skill, annoyingly strong.
The difference between after image strike and wild sense is what exactly?
Wild Sense, I believe, teleports you behind your opponent and attacks automatically. After Image Strike, just teleports you behind the enemy, but you don't attack. You don't have a follow up.
Ah, yeah, I was getting them mixed up. That makes sense why after image strike is just so good then. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really strong.
there's regular After Image, and then there's After Image Strike. There's basically an upgraded version of After, I guess.
Huh. Oh,
But Wild Sense isn't really that difficult to counter if you know the timing. But essentially, when you attack somebody, they teleport behind you and they do a follow up. But you can actually vanish that and just get behind them. So if you know the timing for whoever character has it, then it's the free back shots, as the community likes to call it now for some weird reason.
yeah, yeah, they love throwing that around. I noticed that.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know where in this community you guys got back shots from, but that sounds like sus behavior to me. Just saying.
That is kind of wild, like back shots. Imagine you wanted to give back shots all the time. Like I get for certain people. I know maybe this comes off offensive for certain people that like that, and respect and more power to you that you like getting back shots. My respect, and 2024, and we support everybody here. But but other people, man, I don't think back shots is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I have never used that once. This is literally my very first time using the term back shots when I'm getting hit from behind. That is just odd. Very, very odd.
Uh, and it's funny. It's kind of telling that I never heard the Tenkaichi 3 community. I never heard them refer to any of that as back shots.
I,
But once
actually,
Sparking Zero came out and everyone else got on, they instantly popularized something like that.
that is actually very true. I don't think I've ever heard a single soul from Budokai Tenkaichi 3 back in the day say back shots.
Yeah, pretty much all
Yeah.
the kids, man, they love taking the term back shots. It's like the new word.
But so for the people that are watching this, understand the the issues are how the skill point system works, how super counter works, how vanishing wars work, which is essentially just it's just really boring. They need to reintroduce key signets back for people that abuse the strong skills like insta sparking or after image strike. Although for after image strike, I would say it's only really strong on Vegito because he's already a really good character. He's a fusion, but there's a bunch of other characters that have after image strike, like Kid Goku, I believe, Master Roshi, Bedell, Krillin, I believe, also has it. Dabura surprisingly has it, and but for those characters, I don't really mind it because they're not really that strong. Like Vegito is. Vegito does insane damage, basic attack and damage. And his supers do really good damage, and his ultimate does really good damage as well. So I would just say nerf it mostly on Vegito because fusions are everywhere. Every time you go on singles ranked, it's either always a fusion, MUI Goku, freaking Broly or full power Jiren, and yeah, it gets very exhausting after a while. And okay, so
Yeah.
getting that out of the way for after Ember Strike. Um, uh, like I said, the skill point system, super counters, vanish wars. They need to reintroduce key sickness and emergency wave blaster, like because super counter is either really abusable or really inconsistent, depending simply on the connection and the character that you're fighting. If he's like slow or fast, so emergency wave blaster will be a really good alternative, even if you sacrifice a 1/3 of your health bar, so you can just get out of there and get back to neutral or whatever. And they need to reintroduce a block button, simply a regular block button, and make us flick our stick left and right, like the left stick left and right, how it was in BT3, so you don't get stuck in a you know, where your character's just deflecting and they can easily get a free super ult, and you can't even vanish either because you're in the deflecting animation. And I also have a really, really spicy hot take. So
Uh-oh.
in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, I was or in the series with unblockable supers or ults because it wasn't in a online environment. But I strongly believe that there should be no supers or ultimates because of the Tenkaichi series being introduced in the online environment because people are calling what's the word they like to use, a skill issue if you simply do not
Yeah.
vanish supers or ults, but that is a problem online because the connection isn't always going to be perfect, so it makes it doubly frustrating when you simply get hit by an ult or super that you simply cannot dodge because of either how bad the connection is essentially. So I think the game would be much more healthier online specifically if there was no unblockable supers or ults, unless the super and ult is like a grab or a sacrificial move, like Android 16's explosive grab or Vegeta's final explosion. You know, if
Mhm.
those we can keep unblockable because those will make sense because you lose like all your health and all that stuff, and a grab is it's explanatory. You grab somebody, so yeah. So that would be like my hot take for that. I know people are not gonna like it because I mean, if there were no like unblockable supers or ults, then I guess that would remove one of the problems with the skill point system being how it is, because at least you can block the nonsense that they're trying to throw at you. But yeah, but when it comes to that, I think those are all the issues that I think are with the game, unless somebody in the comments or chat mentions anything else that needs to be mentioned. Maybe I have seen some people on Twitter mention that for some reason when it comes to doing a specific combo string, your character you cannot recover. Like your character just stays like in the air, lifeless, and you can't do anything. And there was also as well with with Jaijirobe, for some reason you can link multiple super. Like it is the funniest thing I have ever done, probably, where your character, depending on how high you are, when you do Jaijirobe's like super slash, since he charges ki so fast, and your character cannot tech the recovery when he does his super, you can easily repeat the process over and over and over until your character dies. And
Wow.
I'm not sure if you can. I've heard some people saying that you can vanish that, but I think you cannot vanish that because you're still in recovery frames when you flopping down. So when it comes to supers that do that, that also needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, but like I said before, it's just like the smaller things that add up into like a bigger problem, essentially, or other stuff that overbloat and help the other stuff become more abusable, essentially.
Okay. Well, that's a very good breakdown of all of that. I mean, I think what this game has going for itself is that it's within the resolution is within reach. For connections, not so much. But for Sparking Zero, um, I can definitely realistically see these issues getting resolved, or at least most of the issues getting taken care of, just because there's so much backing in terms of the budget. There's so much popularity. IP is being handled really well. They sold a lot. Definitely see these things getting taken care of. I am curious, Giant Dad, do you think that, because there's some talks here. There's some talks of trying to get Sparking Zero into Evo. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but for a moment people were trying to hype it up, like, yeah, let's put this game at Evo. Now, some traditional fighting game players had something to say about it. Um, they weren't too fond of that. They were like, "Hey, this is just a for fun game, almost pretty much a party game. There's no way it can be at Evo." Do you think that this game has a shot at going to Evo genuinely?
The simple answer to that would be no.
Oh,
Because of
wow.
because of how the game is, like how the game is made, the game is really just meant to be like dumb fun, and the mechanics are pretty simple to understand or whatever. But maybe in the future, perhaps if they fix all the issues that the game has currently. But as of right now, the game is essentially well, what I would like to call it, a cheese fest, I guess, currently. But it is not out of the realm of possibility that it could be an Evo, but only if the devs fix all the problems and actually introduce actual, I guess, balance changes. But I don't see that working because of how the game is like by nature. So, uh, but my answer would still be no.
Hey, yeah. I think that's
I
fair, honestly.
I think Evo should just keep the traditional fighters like Street Fighter, Tekken, and all those other like 2D you know fighters. I don't think games like the Storm series or the Tenkaichi series really serves like a spot in Evo. Sounds like a bunch of nonsense to me, personally to me. I know some people are not gonna like that, but yet it's how they made the game. Don't come at me, come at the devs for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, and I think it's realistic too. I mean, the director said months in advance, "Hey, um, just like all the past games, there's really not going to be such a thing as game balance in terms of, for example, you're not. It's going to be hard as heck for you to use Roshi and beat like Grade Eight Baby or Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, etc. All those really strong characters that Roshi wouldn't be able to hold a candle to in the anime. It's going to be like that in the game, and he held true to his promise. And I don't know how, but I guess people were conveniently forgetting that. And so now that the game's out, they're complaining about aspects like that. Although I do think the things you talked about so far are genuine concerns that need to get fixed. I'm wondering, how do you feel about um, character balance? Do you think they should try to make weaker characters stronger, or should they just stay true to the core of Tenkaichi and, hey, Cell Junior is Cell Junior, Cyberman is Cyberman, Nappa is Nappa. if you try to use those characters against Ultra Instinct Goku, good luck. Do you think they should try to buff them to put them on par, or at least within the realm of possibility of beating them, or should it, or do you like the way things are now?
That is a very good question. Well, I wanted to bring up two things that they could possibly do. The first, when it comes to at least ranked, if it's any other mode like regular team or you know, then no. But when it comes to single ranked and DP battle, I think everybody should have the same amount of health. Like what I was thinking about, I feel well. It's just in DP. DP is really long too. Like DP also has a problem with the timer that also needs to be addressed because people like to stall in that mode too. So that's the thing that really needs to be addressed as well. Like make it infinite or whatever. But at least in the perspective of singles, I think everybody should have the same amount of health in singles because, for example, Roshi only having 2 health bars against Beerus that has 4 health bars and a half is a problem because nobody's gonna be playing the characters, and I feel that's really important because you guys, worked really hard, put your blood, sweat, and tears into this game for people not to use the characters. I feel like everybody should have the same amount of health regardless of if the character's weak or not, and so you can at least stand a chance because Roshi already doesn't do damage and all that stuff. So having Beerus just hit you
Yeah.
3 times and take half your health bar, that's a bit much, personally, at least to me. And the second thing that I would maybe introduce is scaling.
Ah.
I know that sounds a bit odd, but maybe scaling could also help. Uh, they can make a scaling like percentage depending on the character that you're using. Like if it's like a weaker character like Roshi, don't give him, make the scaling like really low for him. But if you're using somebody like Gogeta Super Saiyan 4, then make it like high. So it maybe that way it balances out. But the damage for supers and ults should just stay how they have it currently. So so they can exempt themselves. Listen, like I'm a top tier. Like I can still mess you up if you give me the chance. But that would be the only two things that I would like. Fix the timer for DP, and when it comes to
Mhm.
singles, make everybody have the same amount of health so they can at least stand a chance. But that's about
See.
it, really, for what I have to think about as of right now, currently.
Yeah. That's awesome for sure. John and Dad, I think those are reasonable. I think they're logical and they're reasonable updates they can make that could at least, insinuate or not insinuate, but incentivize people to really, or rather push these people to use other characters and dabble around with other characters as opposed to the tried and true stuff. Man, um, gosh, it's been crazy just learning about all these things and Sparking Zero and whatnot. But honestly, you know, again, like I said earlier, I think a lot of these issues are within resolution. I think that these are things that can definitely get fixed. I think that the game it can go even further than it already has, which is exciting. I'm excited for the community that loves the game, for the community that plays it, because it's long overdue. I mean, Fighters is great, but Fighters, the casuals are only going to stay on Fighters for so long before they drop off. This is a game that's really resonating with the casuals, uniting their love for Dragon Ball Z. That's really awesome.
Uh,
Um,
I
yeah.
think I think personally, what people don't understand when it comes to any game is that it's always gonna have a competitive scene. It doesn't matter if the game is like super casual or the game is like super competitive, like by nature, like by design. But it's always gonna have a comp. It's always gonna have a comp set, whether you like it or not. Like Spark and Zero having a competitive scene isn't really surprising. I mean, any game can be competitive if you put your mind to it. It's just how the people like to see it, I guess. But by nature, people. I mean, I've heard some people call Spark and Zero that it is a party game. I don't know if I agree with that, but 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 the game is just meant to be stupid fun. But it can't be too fun to the point of being brain scarlet rot, as I like to call it, instead of brain rot, because like being able to just insta spark twice, have and also have an unblockable ult on top of that is a bit much. That's a bit redundant. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if the game is casual or not. You have to at least put some brain power into the game you're playing. Can't just be like Call of Duty where you just grab a gun and just start shooting people and sliding stuff everywhere. This isn't Call of Duty.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's great. I think that's definitely great. A lot of people have a hard time grasping that. And a lot of people try to downplay the skill in some of these other games that aren't traditional fighting games. Heck, even Super Smash Bros. Melee, super crazy, highly technical game, layers on top of layers of mind games and execution, set play, sequences, just crazy play, crazy high level play. But it still gets diminished to, oh, that's a party game. Even though there's so much going on there. And it's just crazy how even in 2024, we're still being set back a little bit by mindsets like that just because, you don't hold back the block or it's not 2D or whatever the case may be. I mean, do you think that one day we'll get to a point where all fighting games can just be respected regardless of whether they're traditional or 2D, Giant Dad?
I mean, yeah, I think so. Shit. I enjoy playing games like freaking Brawlhalla,
Yeah,
and
bro, it's great.
that game is like super casual. Like I would like because everything that game is basically just Smash Brothers but more simplistic, essentially.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
I believe every game has their own like niches and like community. So I think they definitely should be respected. Even though shit, people still play Melee, and that game is like 20 years old
yeah.
competitively. So that's
Yeah,
one
I
that's
was just
one
playing
community
Melee.
one there.
Yeah, I was just playing Melee earlier. It's
So
great. Can't get
yeah,
enough of it.
when it comes to Melee, competitive Melee, if you do not know what you're doing, you will get destroyed.
Yeah,
So
well,
yeah, I but
yeah,
obviously some fighting games don't succeed, but I guess that's just how the cycle goes. I guess some devs are just not successful as others.
yeah. I
Hmm.
agree. Well, Giant Dad, where can everyone find you?
For everybody that watches this, if you are interested, my Twitter name would be professional casual. That's CASUL casual, not casual. And my Twitter at is Solus Vagabond, SOLUS Vagabond. If you want to talk to me there, just send me a message, I guess.
Well, there you have it. You know where you can find them. Of course, as usual, you'll be able to check the description and get right to those socials and connect with them. Definitely a very intelligent player, knows his stuff, and it's great having you on today to talk about some of these issues. As always, thank you guys for watching another episode of The Conversation. This has been your host, CaRai,
And your co-host Sync.
joined by,
Giant Dad, I'll see you guys later.
and we are out.